for Impact.
Welcome to the 28th episode of Brace for Impact, covering all things Impact Wrestling, live from No Cell Studios. I'm the Ace of Tavern, Acefield Retro, and joined, man, on this Thursday evening, the last one of 2023. I'm Mania Colton. Jesse, what is up, dude?
What's going on, brother? Man, yeah, happy almost New Year, 28th episode of Brace for Impact. Hard to believe we've been at this for 28 weeks, man. I feel like it's just flown by. But yeah, this is it, man. We are putting a bow on Impact Wrestling, and this coming month, making the transition back to TNA. So it feels good. It feels like it's been a long time coming.
One lump sum of, as you said, repackaging Impact TNA, but also saying goodbye to 2023 and moving into 2024, which is set to be a great year of pro wrestling. And, you know, here at the Tavern, we have gone through another year of content week after week, show after show. And we're going to do a recap of that wrestling tonight. The tourneys airing on New Year's Day. So if you guys are in the house New Year's Day, recovering from a night of partying, or you guys want to listen on audio the next day after, check us out. We're going to be giving all these superlatives for the year end to talk about wrestling as a whole, not just, you know, wrestling in AEW, wrestling in WWE, wrestling in Impact / TNA. No, it's wrestling with a holistic approach. But today, Colton, we're going to be really focused on putting a nice, neat little package of what was 2023 in Impact Wrestling, talking about all the great stuff, because what a year it was here. To really, we joined halfway through. You mentioned 28 weeks, it's almost exactly halfway, but the transition from ROH on our end to Impact Wrestling was a godsend, and we've witnessed a lot of great wrestling.
Yeah, we really did, man. I mean, 2023 has been a great year for all of professional wrestling, but a very, very poignant year for Impact. I mean, it's the last couple of years have been great for this promotion, but I feel like we really did. We jumped in right at the right time, man. I mean, we got some of the best storylines that this promotion's seen in the last decade. And man, yeah, it's just going back, preparing for the show and thinking about everything that's happened over 2023, like actually trying to pick a favorite match was, you know, it was actually pretty tough, man, because we had so many good ones this year. It was, it's just been a hell of a year for wrestling as a whole, man. It's I know we say it all the time, but what a time to be a wrestling fan. I mean, it's you've got no shortage of content anywhere you look, and it just seems like going into the new year, we're going to get more, and things are just going to keep getting better and better.
And the conversation on the debate was talking about TNA, and I wish you or I were on the show to talk about it, to give TNA its flowers, but I thought they did a great job talking about the question that everybody's asking about this move to TNA and moving away from the Impact brand and taking that next step, and what would it take for them to challenge AEW in the coming years as the second promotion, and would that be a good thing for TNA if they wanted to be running bigger arenas and have a national presence? And I, you know, pivot to you. If you were asked the question, do you think TNA has the capability in the coming years to take on AEW and maybe surpass them in the upcoming calendar year?
Man, I wouldn't count them out by any means. I mean, especially considering the momentum that the company's got right now, built up over the last couple of years, and the buzz they have and the nostalgia grab they have going back to the TNA moniker. I mean, look at their roster, man. I mean, the roster and the booking has been some of the best in professional wrestling. So, yeah, I wouldn't count them out by any means, especially, I mean, I guess you could say AEW, I guess, I wouldn't necessarily go in and say they're in a down time right now. I'm still enjoying the product they're putting out, but you could certainly make the argument that compared to where they were this time 3 years ago, that maybe it's a little bit, the product's down a little bit. I mean, I think they've got a hill to climb if they really want to surpass AEW as number 2. But I think with the right exposure, the right, platform for weekly TV, man, I mean, I think their product would absolutely present a challenge. And, you mentioned them talking about it on the debate. I'm going to be on the debate for January 1st coming up, and it sounds like we're going to be talking a little bit more Impact Wrestling and TNA as well. So it's an exciting time to be TNA wrestling, man, because I mean, you're, especially with this, we were talking about it last week, the potential crossover with WWE, whether that be a one-time thing for Hard to Kill or that's something that we're going to see more of. I would lean towards the latter, considering that they do have this deal where they're, having their streaming sponsored and hosted by Endeavor. I mean, sky's the limit there, man. I mean, I think that's a pretty huge deal to be able to say, to have crossover with WWE and TNA talent.
Yeah, they're sitting not on the same blanket at the beach, but they're under, they're at least a stone's throw away. You can hear their music playing on the speaker if you want to use that example of it. They're close to being under the same umbrella as far as proximity goes. And sometimes proximity breeds just, comfortability. And maybe the comfortability with having the parent company overseeing operations in whatever capacity it is brings a closeness to them. And the door is as open as it's ever been. But going back to the debate, I'm not sure who had said it, but I took umbrage with something that was said about a suggestion on how Impact / TNA can get better in the calendar year. And it was taking aim at Scott D'Amore and saying Scott D'Amore needs to hire people around him to help expand the business. But if you're watching closely, and you and I are doing it very closely, following the news on a week-to-week basis, sometimes day-to-day, TNA / Impact is in a spot because of Scott D'Amore, because of his forward thinking, his ability to pivot, his ability to kind of look to what the fans want, taking the pulse. And I think if someone was sitting in that chair that wasn't Scott D'Amore, if you had other voices maybe influencing him, we wouldn't be in a position right now where TNA has the opportunity to take this nostalgic leap and then also take that current day storytelling. Because as soon as Scott D'Amore got the reins, that's the transition point where Impact took the next level and the storytelling's been consistent. So I know it's easy to say, surround yourself with wrestling people and find different minds. And that's great. I mean, it's always a suggestion you could throw in the box. That's always the criticism on AEW. Get more wrestling people behind and find a way to, help them help you grow. But I just don't think that helps, because how many wrestling people were involved in TNA prior? I mean, I understand Dixie Carter was the one signing the checks, but there are a lot of wrestling people, quote unquote, behind the scenes. And right now, Scott D'Amore is the best of both worlds. He is a wrestling guy, but he is doing things not inside this, match and play, putting in a hole that just fits. He is stepping outside the box and looking at wrestling through a different lens and approaching it because, similar to like the Oakland Athletics back in the day with Billy Beane, you don't have all the funds the New York Yankees do. So you find a way to compete with a different level, the analytics, studying the tape and making sure that you're giving fans what they want. And that's what Impact's been doing. They get the most juice out of the fruit that you could squeeze out of. That rind is completely squished up and found, and you throw it away. They find every ounce to maximize. And I just, for them, with a little bit of momentum behind them and the nostalgic push, the sky is the limit, truly is, because I think it's a dangerous combination with the storytelling being consistent and how the quality of the work rate, that's not even something we mentioned before, and add in the flair of these rose-colored glasses that makes your past with all the warts look forgiving. God damn, dude, this is going to be really, really exciting going forward.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I'm right there with you as far as Scott D'Amore, him being the one at the helm. I mean, has played a major role in where Impact TNA is in today, if not the biggest role. I mean, I definitely, and I don't think, I didn't take that suggestion as, oh, Scott D'Amore needs to do things different or he needs to surround himself with other people to try to get him to the next level. I think Scott D'Amore has done a damn good job of getting him to the next level. However, I wouldn't think, and he does have wrestling people there with him. I mean, Tommy Dreamer plays a big role backstage, and I think there are probably several others. I think Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin, who've been with the company for so long, probably have a little bit of say in the way things run backstage, I would imagine. So, I mean, I think he's got wrestling people around him. As this company continues to grow, do I think it is a good idea for Scott D'Amore to probably get some well-qualified people back there to help him out so he's not doing everything? Yeah, I think that's a great idea probably, because, the guy he's always on, man. I mean, he as far as interviews go and people who are commenting, I mean, he is the face of that company. You don't see anybody else taking interviews for any sort of TNA press coverage. It's always Scott, and the guy stays pretty busy, man. And it's a business of passion, but even the most passionate, most hardworking people experience burnout after a certain amount of time. So I mean, if they're going to continue to climb, I don't think it's a bad idea to get some more hands in there to help you out by any means.
Yeah, and I think if we look at, use Tony Khan, for example, putting a lot on your plate and having to separate yourself, I think the addition of Collision definitely has been a lot for Tony Khan. And then on top of that, Ring of Honor programming. And then, add on top of that, you have the house shows they start to run, as infrequently as they may be. You still have to plan for them. And then on top of that, you have international travel. So Tony Khan, the one-man show, couldn't last in that direction. I still think, looking at from the lens of Scott D'Amore and what he's able to do, I think he sees in different colors than we do as far as where this company is going. I think he has the ability to see a roadmap that may be invisible to other people. I think he knows exactly where they'll be, or at least where he hopes they'll be in mid 2024, 2025, 2026 going forward, because he's a guy who has vision, and the passion you mentioned before about the brand, it is contagious. When you listen to him talk about TNA, there's not many wrestling executives that you could sit there and listen to that you feel there's a genuine love for the three letters or whatever you want to say of their wrestling promotion. There's a love for this company, and it exudes off him. And I know that, he has a history there. Obviously, Team Canada, the dude has been there. But for whatever reason, this Impact roster today in 2023 going to 2024 is as galvanized as ever. They feel like a team with one direction. And comparing that to a lot of different promotions, it's very rare you see that where there's this movement in the right direction. Like the only other example I can think of top of my head would be like, peak ECW, where everyone just had the mode of the brand is bigger than me, and I want this to succeed over me. I mean, ECW was the extreme example of it, no pun intended, where people are not taking a paycheck for the betterment of the brand. So the passion, even the fan base too, there's a movement happening here with TNA, and I hope they can capitalize, because we know how quickly the news cycle moves in wrestling. They have from January 13th to probably end of January or right around the Rumble weekend to capitalize and get people in the door, because the wrestling news cycle moves far away from it, and they might lose their opportunity to cash in at the table, because as you know, in Vegas, you have to make sure you hit it when it's right. But I think they are on to something here, and I have confidence that Hard to Kill is going to blow people out of the water, and the surprises will add on top of the work rate and make people want to come back, and hopefully they'll know where to find it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think that'll be the biggest thing for them will be the where to find it and the improvement that Endeavor brings to the streaming that Impact Plus has kind of left a little bit to be desired. So, I think they've got everything they need. They got all the ammunition in the world. They just need to make sure that people know where to find it, and the delivery of the product is spot on, which with Endeavor behind it, I think that they're on the right track, man. I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out. It's crazy to me that we still have a few more weeks to get to Hard to Kill. We were discussing shortly before we went on air, are we going to see new TNA branded weekly TV leading up to Hard to Kill? And it doesn't sound like it. At least anything that we can find, scouring the corners of the internet wrestling world to see if we can find any news on that. I feel like if it was going to happen, we would have heard about it by now. So, we've still got, a solid 2.5 weeks before we get there, man. So it's going to be anybody and everybody who's a TNA fan is, I'm sure, chomping at the bit to finally get to Hard to Kill and see what this new era is going to look like.
So if you're watching this live, obviously you just saw the second half of the best of 2023 on Access, if you're watching that. And then going forward, it's anyone's guess what they'll do for the January 4th episode. Could be another Hidden Gems, could be a precursor, a goodbye, maybe a best of Impact in general, like take the abbreviated version of their history and do a catch-all to say goodbye to Impact. And it's a slippery slope. You don't want to sensationalize something you're saying goodbye to and make people miss it. You want to put the excitement in the other direction for TNA, or do a TNA nostalgic show. I know they have the endless amount of contents on the app. I'm sure they're sifting through it to make it streamlined for the app and making sure it runs well. So maybe they're very familiar with it. They'll find a way to keep this going. But I think, as we mentioned before, finding the product is going to be huge in 2024, because we have to, as wrestling fans, we know where to find it. You have to make that extra effort. And some people don't want to make that effort. They want it just thrown in their face. And right now you can't discover this product unless you're seeking it out. But it's an interesting conversation, because everyone says, leave Access TV and find a different spot. What people don't realize is, if you quietly forgot back in 2019, I believe it was end of 2019, Anthem quietly purchased some of Access TV. So they have some stake in staying on there. And I know that they're happy with the growth. We saw that PW Insider report earlier this year talking about, as incremental as the growth might be and as small as they're making progress, they like the replay numbers. They also think that they're doing better as far as projections of the future. I would love them to maybe take a home on a different platform, whether it be a national cable network or maybe a streaming platform, finding a way to increase the eyes on the product. Because right now, unless you're seeking out, it's hard to find. And that you're asking wrestling fans a lot, especially with, as you mentioned before, we have so much wrestling on our plates. We have the ability to watch 24 hours a day, just new matches every single hour of the day until the ends of time. So if you're asking wrestling fans to seek something out, you're asking a lot from them. So if you want to cash in and get a lot of these fans out there, you have to find a way to bring it to their doorstep. And how do you do that? And I'm not sure if it's on Access.
I'm not sure if it is either. I mean, Access, I'm a cable cutter. I don't have typical cable TV. So obviously I have to seek this out. The benefit that they have is that the product is good enough that wrestling fans will seek it out, but don't do yourself a disservice. I mean, Access, I'm with you. I don't think it's necessarily the place to bring it to everybody's door. But I feel like low-key Access is like more places than you think it is. Like I've been to hotel rooms and Access is in the cable package for like
a lot of countries too, like a lot.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it's in places that you might not necessarily think of. But as far as the way the average American wrestling fan consumes their wrestling, it ain't anywhere near the top of anybody's list, especially if you don't have cable. So it's like I said, the benefit they do have is the product's been so damn good that people will seek it out. It's got a buzz around it. We're not the only ones talking about it. I'm with you though. They need to do something to make it a little bit more accessible. I mean, for the most part, wrestling fans are today, I think, a lot of us are cable cutters. We're finding other ways to stream these products. And, AEW, WWE especially, they do a good job of making it pretty difficult to find. For Raw, they do a pretty good job of making it pretty difficult to watch it any other way than having a cable subscription or having a login from somebody that has a cable subscription to stream it via Bravo app or something else that USA is associated with. But yeah, that being said, man, there's plenty of competition out there. So the easier and more accessible you make something, the better off you're going to be. But either way, I no matter where this product goes, I'll follow along, man. I absolutely love it. I'm coming to watch it, whether they end up going forward or backwards as far as platform. I'll go wherever it lands.
Yeah, I want to make it clear too. I think non-traditional forms of a platform would be achievable. It doesn't have to be standard, whatever amount of channels you have on basic cable. It doesn't have to be there because I think we've moved past it. They just have to find a different level of reach. And I think, as you mentioned before, Access has the ability to reach a lot of international consumers. They find a way to bridge that gap. But, if I'm looking at just as far as where fans are willing to expand past the accessibility and look at the New Japan Pro Wrestling World app. When they were the hottest thing and WWE was leaving a lot to be desired before AEW, New Japan Pro Wrestling was huge. And if the build to Wrestle Kingdom or like the build to Dominion and eventually Dominion, where you'd have to navigate that app. And if anyone's had to do it, I'm sure most of the people listen to our voices have used that New Japan World app, just how terrible it is, especially for the Apple consumer, where you click it, you have to go on the browser and then click off of it and go onto the app. And then the way you had to get it on the screen is you have to do the workaround. It has to be a Chromecast. It can't be an Apple TV. Needless to say, people found a way to watch it because it was worth it. Wrestle Kingdom was putting on the best show of the year. It still does. I'm looking forward to Wrestle Kingdom coming up next year, but it definitely doesn't have the same buzz. I think that has a lot to do with the emergence of AEW and even Impact having a say in that, because now we're getting stateside versions of what they were doing and we had to seek it outside in Japan. But I think they showed the blueprint that fans, if they're desperate enough and they think the product is worth it, they'll go stand on the street corner and watch it on a projector if it's that good. So 100%. I think that is part of maybe the mindset of sticking with this Access model and understanding that the growth is going to be incremental. And maybe our growth isn't going to be, as far as promotions go, this standard way of assessing success, which is going to be, cable ratings. Maybe it's going to be statistics that happen here on social media. Maybe it's going to be a different way. Because personally, I love the Twitch deal. The fact that they were streaming 24/7. They have the Tubi deal, which has a free Impact channel where you can turn it on and watch Impact endless amount of times, and it's free. Those non-traditional ways of thinking can help build the company. And like I said, Scott Tamora looks and views the world in different colors that we're not seeing. So all of us that are saying It would be nice. It would be nice if they're on TNT, but I don't think that is the future where he wants this company, nor should he. I think he sees this product living somewhere else. I guess we just don't see where it's going to be yet.
Right, man. I'm fully confident that Scott is seeing it 5-6 steps ahead. And, you know, he knows, I think he's got his finger on the pulse of what the future of, you know, weekly wrestling is as far as distribution and platform goes. And I mean, like I mentioned earlier, man, I mean, I feel like overall the Endeavor deal is getting downplayed a little bit. I just like, you know, we heard the announcement and then we really haven't heard much else about it. I mean, that's a huge vote of confidence with this company and their product to get Endeavor involved, man. Like I'm sure that they were approached by Endeavor. It wasn't the other way around. And that's super telling to the product that they have.
Yeah. And I also look at, I think maybe that news washed over people because of the news of Warner Bros. Discovery and the Paramount emerging merger. We can hear Chad and I talk about this on Wrestling Tonight that aired on Monday or on Tuesday on audio. You guys can check that out. That type of news, as you say, it kind of falls under the surface and everyone sees the finished product, but not the steps that led up to it. And I think everyone would be surprised eventually if we have this co-promoted show with WWE, or we see WWE stars appearing on an Impact or a TNA ring, I should say, or vice versa. People will be like, how did this happen? I can't believe it. But if you followed where it's been going, like you said, vote of confidence with Endeavor powering this app and working together, being in-house together, it's always been in front of us. Like that's the type of stuff where how could you be surprised if that's the result when it's always been right there in front of us? And as you said before, a lot of people just look at the surface, and we were talking about before, wrestling fans wait for the news to be fed straight into their mouth without doing any of the investigatory skills, or they wait till someone tells them what to think. So until someone tells them that this is a big deal, it's not a big deal to them. And I think, you know, I'm telling you right now, listen to me, it's a big deal. To have a app being powered by a professional, you know, with people with the eyes on growth, not just like, oh, cool, we'll put the content, have it live somewhere. Yeah, it's buggy. Who cares? No, this is going to be top of the line. It's going to help bring eyes to the product. And not to mention the other outside things is the tentacles extend with Endeavor. You can look next door and see who's there. It's TKO, knock, knock. Kind of have over some sugar, WWE.
Yeah, it's a big deal, man. Like you said, if it's gotten lost in the sauce with people, and they're going to be awfully surprised, I think, man. 6 months down the road, look at where TNA is and look at their distribution and the quality of their streaming, and it's going to be night and day.
We'll go back to the original question we asked each other about the debate question. Like, I don't think it's in the immediate, and I think they took two different paths, of course. And, you know, I think everyone looks at the milestones that AEW hit. It's hard to achieve that. To sell out Wembley, to do what they did on the initial in 5 years is insane. But at the same time, as far as where the wrestling market is today and public perception is, right now it's two different worlds. I know that you were talking about AEW not being in a down period, and I agree. If you're watching the programming from wall to wall and watching Collision and watching what they do with the C2 and Dynamite and the build towards World's End, it's quality shit. It's the AEW I love. But as far as the court of public opinion, AEW is at its all-time low, because that's what whatever mass opinion maker is telling you to think. That is what the rhetoric is out there saying. And the benefit of that is TNA/Impact sliding in and being in everybody's good graces. Like, they can't do anything wrong right now. And that might be the beneficiary of being number 3 and being out of the eyes of big bad WWE with their laser eyes like Godzilla taking out other promotions. But they got to capitalize on that, because they're in the perfect place right now. The sweet spot, this lull before the Royal Rumble, this 3-week period before we have really anything going on in wrestling. Yes, Wrestle Kingdom's happening, but that's even before Hard to Kill hits. Once Hard to Kill hits, they have the limelight of the wrestling world on them, and they have the ability to shine really, really bright. And I think this is their opportunity to knock it out of the park. And I'm really hopeful they will. And I'm actually confident they will.
I'm confident they'll knock it out of the park. And the timing of the show is perfect, man. Because like you said, Ace, you set yourself up to be the conversation of what, like the only conversation of what's going on in professional wrestling prior to the Rumble. I mean, that's a good time. You know, it's one of the only lull periods the entire year for this, you know, this sport that has no off season. So yeah, I mean, this is their opportunity, man. They're going to smash it.
So let's get into the insight, talk more about the news here. Of course, we're going to be talking about Hard to Kill as the card takes shape, some other news story here, and we'll definitely get into it, having a larger conversation throughout the show, but we'll be hitting the insight right now.
The insight.
All right, here we are, the Inside Colton, and we have a lot of stuff to get to. And we're going to start with Deonna Purrazzo. We were talking about her upcoming free agency last week, and there's been more conversation here as she approaches, the end of her run, maybe with Impact Wrestling. And we know that she's been really the highlight. She's been a superstar on their end, and we talked about her whereabouts, where she might go. And she's only been with the promotion for about 3 years. She joined the promotion in 2020, and in that period of time, she's become a 3-time Knockouts champion, a 1-time Knockouts tag team champion, and she's also main evented and headlined numerous pay-per-views. She had that great match with Jordan Grace, Mickie James, and now as we're sitting here on the precipice of 2024, she's becoming a free agent. She was interviewed about this, talking with Gabby AF. I'll read her quote in a second, and I know you and I had an extended conversation about Deonna last week, but I think it warrants more conversation here. Just your thoughts on Deonna as she approaches her free agency, and what do you think about what's the most attractive spot for her to land?
Man, I think the sky's the limit for Deonna Purrazzo, and I think it's going to be, I think she's got good opportunities really anywhere. I mean, I could see her doing well, and I struggle to see her sliding into main roster WWE like immediately. I think there would be enough recognition there, and I know that they're definitely open. There's definitely a little bit of a gap to fill there with Charlotte being announced that she's going to be out for 9 months or more. But I think she'd do really, really well in NXT. I think I could also see her sliding into AEW pretty well. I also selfishly would love to see her stay with TNA, but I think that she's in a much different spot than when she came into Impact. She's really played a big part in, not that the Knockouts division, we give flowers to the Knockouts division on being the best women's wrestling period, bar none in the sport. I think she's a big part of that. And I think that, it might be time for her to, her stock might be worth a little bit more somewhere else at this point. But I don't know. I think that she'd do really well either AEW or NXT. I don't see her going to a smaller promotion by any means. But yeah, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this on Wrestling Tonight as well, and I think she has unfinished business in WWE. I think and we'll read the quote in a second. She's been saying in every interview that she was let go. It was one of the toughest things she's ever dealt with in her life, and she used it as motivating sort of circumstances to move her in the direction where she's at now. She took the Drew McIntyre path. And I mean, she went to Impact and rebranded herself to a main eventer. She was a relative unknown. I mean, Drew had a little bit more zest on him going out of WWE. He was a former IC champion. He was the chosen one under Vince and stuff, but he was a missed opportunity, a failed project. And he went into Impact and tore it up, man. He became undeniable as Drew Galloway and came back to WWE with a vengeance. And I pause to even say that Impact / TNA should function like that, but I think people have their own single aspirations for what they want to achieve in the wrestling world, and you can't help that. If Deonna Purrazzo looks at wrestling through a lens of she wants to compete at WrestleMania, she wants to be in WWE, she has unfinished business there because she feels wrong there, she wants to make that right. I'm not saying that is a feeder system. Because I think people will look at it that way. Like, okay, she honed her craft. She became a certain type of wrestler. She became better. And now she's ready to go back to the big leagues. And I want to make sure that that's not the perception, especially when TNA rebrands, as we were talking about, potentially challenging to be the number 2 promotion in the world. We don't want that to be, okay, they go there, they get a little bit better, and then they come back. But even if she does that, which I do, I agree. I think NXT might be her home going forward. To me, I think that is not a sign that TNA is going to be a feeder system. It's more individual to Deonna, because every interview she said it, man, she's bothered by what went down when she was released. Because I mean, even the quote here, she said, going into Impact, I think by time in NXT deemed me a little bit difficult, a little bit outspoken, a little bit maybe cocky or overconfident. I think I've been able to rehab that image of myself and show able to people like, no, I'm a team player. Yes, of course, I want to be a champion to be at the top, but I'm also a champion to handle all responsibilities that come with that. So we'll continue with the quote in a second, but she makes every effort to mention what went.
I think we might have lost you, Ace. But picking up where you left off, man, yeah, I think you're right. Deonna Purrazzo does make every effort that there is to mention what went down with NXT. I mean, just in the last 2 weeks, we've talked or her departure from WWE. We've picked up the last 2 weeks interviews where she's talked about that. So obviously she still feels like she has something to prove with the way that went down. She feels that, maybe she feels that the way she was let go was different, and maybe she felt different and that she was perceived incorrectly. There he is, he's back. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you, man. Just picking up where you left off. I mean, she does make a point to bring up her departure from WWE and how it went down pretty much every time that she's asked. So it's obvious that, I don't want to say she hasn't made peace with that situation, but she has something to prove that, she is not who she thought, who they maybe thought she was, or whatever perception there was of her when she was let go. But that she even, or if she has, or if she maybe is, that she has the cred and the resume to back it up at this point. If she is somebody that's seen as overconfident or over cocky or something like that, and just the fact that she has proved that she can absolutely be a team player, she can be a champion, she can carry a division, that sets her up to, be like, I have grown, I have progressed, and anything that, maybe wasn't working here to begin with, I think I've done what was necessary to clean up my side of the street on that.
Yeah, and I think a lot with Deonna Purrazzo as well has to do with what she recognizes is left to accomplish. And if you look at what she's done in Impact, is there anything else she wants to accomplish? We mentioned before, a 3-time Knockouts champion. She's main evented shows. Has she done everything there is to do there? And maybe she's the only one that has that answer. I mean, there's a possibility where she can compete for other championships. We've seen, obviously, setting the mode, Tessa Blanchard competing for men's championships. Maybe she wants to go that path. I don't foresee that being the case here, but for her, the Virtuosa is the only one that can decide what is for her and what's in her future. And I think she deserves that. I mean, if we look at these last 3 years, you mentioned before, she was a huge piece. She was the core of the Knockouts division when they were desperate for a new core. And she, we even saw the story of this year for her in 2023 from the beginning into the end was a tale of two tapes. I mean, she was one of the more protected wrestlers, men or women, as far as booking goes throughout the whole year. She's the beneficiary and well-deserved. She was protected in a lot of ways. She became secondary as far as booking goes because Trinity took the forefront, and deservedly so. It was her time to shine. And now we're sitting here, end of 2023. Of course, they're hesitant to put more stake into what she's doing because they want to protect, if she does leave, they want her to do the right thing on the way out. But I mean, she talked about the decision not being easy, but to me, the decision seems like it's already made. Like, I feel like she's going to explore free agency. And if the offers are not out there for her, she may decide to keep the relationship with Impact. And that might be okay. Because as we said with Nick Aldis, we said with Mickie James, we said it when PCO eventually was leaving, then he came back. The door is never shut. And I think being someone with a legacy, there is a group of hierarchy of just this leadership team in behind the scenes in the history of Impact that have this, stamp your hand, you can come and go as you please. And I think Deonna's earned that. And I think she's eventually going to be in their Hall of Fame. It's not going to be this year. It's not going to be next year. She's eventually going to be welcomed back with open arms, even if she decides to leave, because that's just the way they do business. The promotion looks at it, again, through a different lens and a lot of different, there's no vindictive nature to, you want to go out there and get big money. You want to go out there and be on a different stage. We'll be here waiting for you, and your legacy will be protected here. But my opinion, I think she's done there, especially with the way the booking has taken place. It feels like what is left for her to do in the beginning of 2024, unless she lights something up that is completely outside the ordinary, she's done it all. So why not go out to NXT or WWE or even AEW, maybe New Japan Pro Wrestling, find something different and come back, because they'll be waiting here for you and they'll welcome you back with open arms.
Absolutely. And especially considering that Jordan Grace is back on the scene too. I mean, they had great programs together, but I mean, like you said, we don't need to totally rehash that. She's done that. We've already seen that, two different versions of that. So I think you're right, man. I think she's kind of done all that she can do. But to go back to what you were originally saying about how you don't want TNA to be viewed as this, let me go rehab my career and get back to the big leagues. I think that, I'm fully confident that, especially going forward into 2024, that's not going to be the case. And I think that just speaks, I think with Deanna being able to do that here, that just speaks volumes to how far the company, I mean, Impact 3 years ago and Impact today are totally different. That's, I'd be even willing to say that 3 years ago, that Impact was that kind of company for sure. But with her help and the help of others, it is a firm number 3 and a place where people are excited to be landing. It's a destination for people, not just a best option after, coming off or getting cut from WWE like it might have been 3 to 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's also, helped by Will Ospreay's, the CM Punks of the world. Like, even if they didn't decide to go there and be there, their compliments deem a lot in the public eye. They hold a lot of weight. So when CM Punk talks about it at Bound for Glory, that what he saw in the locker room, and talks about the talent there, and then Will Ospreay's complimentary on his way into AEW, those things mean a lot, because 2 of the best wrestlers that exist today are talking about the company being in a different spot. And I think that is part of public perception. And it's not everything. Public perception is not everything, but it does hold a lot of weight as far as why fans should be watching. You don't want to be watching a secondary product. And I think years ago, go back to the OG TNA, when you watch guys that were mid-carders elsewhere, they would come to Impact or TNA and win the championship. And it's like, okay, just by looking at this optically, they're lesser than. And maybe they were okay with being that. But you want to be careful with, and I think they've done a really good job of this when they have their world champions, Alex Shelley most specifically, appearing in New Japan. He's on the same level as Okada and Tanahashi and Sonata. He's on that level. Same thing with Chris Sabin at the X Division champion. And I think you have to protect that, because that is more valuable than anything else you can invest in when your champions are being perceived to be on the same level as other champions that are major promotions. And that's why I'd have hesitance. I mean, it's Paul Levesque. He has a different way of looking at things, of having any sort of relationship with WWE, unless you can get guarantee that your champions will be looked at as, it doesn't have to be stronger. They don't have to pin Roman Reigns or Seth Rollins, but at the very least, not be embarrassed that they're like mid-card level talent. You want to make sure that you guys are looked at in this, that would be my starting point of the conversation. I want our perception to your casual audience that this guy is a world champion. He should be treated as such.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You want that type of relationship to be as mutually beneficial as possible. And that's, I don't think at this point, I don't think Scott D'Amore is going to let them in a position to where, bringing Impact talent over or TNA talent over is just going to be, squash matches. Like there's no way that he's going to let that happen.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I mean, unless there's like this life-changing money that they receive, as similar to ECW, where, they'll be quiet about Paul Heyman cashing a check from WWF at the time. But I mean, all reports say he was, and you watch the ECW talent be looked at as lesser than WWF, and they were okay with that because their fans understood really the process. And you don't want to fall into that mix of they're doing such great things right now, following the path that they've been on. We've been really enjoying what they're doing. You don't want to just like throw an asteroid into the road you're traveling on and then veer off into the woods of this unknown. You got to take some risks, but they have to be calculated and have to deal in, first and foremost, the perception of your company, and make sure you have this idea that, again, your champions are perceived as equal part as another promotion champion. That's what the relationship with AEW was as well, and New Japan. They all work in sync with each other, that everyone has the same idea, protect each other at all costs. Yes, someone has to go over in these matches. The Tanahashi's losing to MJF when you have these Forbidden Door shows, but you have to find a way to make sure everyone is sort of perceived as an equal. And that is the challenging part about getting anybody in the same room for these super shows, and why WWE has a resistance to doing it, because they always want to be top dog on campus. And sometimes this doesn't work as far as this co-promoter show, because sometimes WWE has to lose. And that's where the conversation starts and stops.
Yeah. It's historically a hard pill for WWE to swallow. But like you said, man, it's, Triple H's leadership, allegedly a different company. We'll see. Still waiting to see how that plays out. It's still early, but yeah, I mean, I think that the reputation of Impact TNA and where it is now, and just the amount of pride that roster and its leadership has in the product, like there's no way that they're gonna come out the way that ECW did. That I just don't think I don't even think they'd entertain the conversation if that's where it sounds like it's going.
So we also have some news about Hard to Kill coming up, and we've had announcements of matches. You and I were discussing how are they going to promote the show without live programming, and they found a way, and they're using social media, and it's getting a lot of buzz. People are excited for these matches, and the lineup for this pay-per-view under the returning promotional banner of TNA is taking shape. So we have these announcements of some pre-show matches as well. So I guess we'll start there, where we're going to get an hour-long pre-show for Hard to Kill, and they're going to be calling it the Countdown to Hard to Kill. It's going to be streaming exclusively on the TNA Plus app, which I thought was unique because usually it would be on YouTube as well. And this is going to be a 60-minute pre-show filled with some action here with 3 matches specifically. But another matches are going to be announced as well. We get Rich Swann versus Steve Macklin, Eric Young and Frank Kazarian teaming up to take on Brian Myers and Eddie Edwards. The Digital Media Championship will be defended, Tommy Dreamer against Crazy Steve. And they're also going to be, talking about hyping up the perks of TNA Plus. And I thought this was a good step in the right direction to build this show, get everyone excited for it, and adding some people onto this card because there's some big names without any stories going on. And that's just the circumstances we're in right now. But it's nice to see everyone's having some work on this day.
Absolutely, man. I mean, that was been ever since we got the announcement about TNA Plus and the, programming deal with Endeavor. That's been my question. I was like, well, how are they going to plug this? And how leading up to Hard to Kill, how are they going to promote this? And happy to see them really hitting the ground running with it. The fact that the pre-show is going to be exclusively on there, I think is a great move. You get eyes on it and just get people downloading it and trying it out. But yeah, I mean, this is going to be pretty strong. Like usually a pre-show, man. I mean, a lot of pre-show announcements, you'll get a match announcement like, oh, that'll be cool, but it's not exactly enough to get you to tune in a full hour early. They've got some good ones lined up here.
I mean, got Rich Swann, former world champion, Steve Macklin, former world champion, Eric Young, Eddie Edwards, former world champion. So like you have guys on this pre-show that hold a lot of weight. And yeah, there's not a lot of meat on the story with Rich Swann and Steve Macklin, but I'm just here for the action, man. This is a party. Everyone's here for the rebrand of TNA. And sometimes you don't really need that much build. You don't need a blood feud going into this because the main story is already established. It's them going from Impact to TNA. And then you really have the top of the cards to do the heavy lifting. But like I said, this is a wrestling festival, man. I think that everyone has the idea that this is going to be good times, good vibes for everybody. And just everyone's going to be taking everything in, not even just the in-ring action, but it's going to be the entrance ramp. It's going to be the camera work. It's going to be the banners. It's going to be the lower thirds. Everything about seeing the TNA logo on our screen is going to be surreal for a lot of wrestling fans. And I think that's part of the allure. That's almost your biggest attraction here outside of the great action we have to anchor the top of the card.
Yeah. And man, going to the Tommy Dreamer and Crazy Steve Digital Media Championship match. I mean, this story's already a little bit, we've seen it. It's been taken off TV and cooled off since we've had to do the punt here. But, we saw this, we've seen this built up, and I'm hoping that maybe they'll take this opportunity over the next couple of weeks to, sticking true to the championship name. Maybe they'll have some vignettes that we see only on social media between Steve and Tommy Dreamer that we get to promote this match a little bit more. I mean, not that, like you said, it's already established. It's not that we need it, but I mean, it's the Digital Media Championship, man. Let's get on there, especially if we're not doing weekly TV. I would love to see, just a backstage pre-tapes of them hyping this match up and just some development via social media, because Impact, I mean, we've been giving them their flowers last couple of weeks, man. They've been doing it, especially with all the signings and the re-signings. They're doing a really good job of putting that out there on social media and making it very visible. So, I mean, dial into what you're talented with, man. And let's maybe get some exclusive content on the socials, building up some of these matches.
So outside of the hour-long pre-show, we got a match announced for the main card. PCO and Dirty Dangle will take each other on in a singles match in Vegas. So Dangle will accompany Oleg Prudius and Alpha Bravo for the match. And this is a match for the sake of a match here. But PCO, we know that he was rumored to be done in October. After Bound for Glory, it seemed like he was going to be done with the company. And, I think this match writes itself at this point because we know PCO's story. He's the French Canadian Frankenstein. He's a guy who's just going to go in there and wreck each other. And Dango has an anti-pro wrestling gimmick where he hates pro wrestling, and I'm sure he hates this version of pro wrestling. This has a lot of fun, where this could be a lot of, what you love about TNA. And this isn't just, they're not going to have a Monsters Ball match. It's not going to be, the same type of stuff we're going to see with those type of matches. But I'd imagine we're going to see a little bit of flair of, an Abyss or something like that, where, it wouldn't even shock me to see someone show up during this match, because it's just the opening for just fun moments. And this match, I expect Dirty Dango to get his head kicked in by PCO, but he's going to go down with a fight. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one, man. We haven't gotten to see a whole lot of Dango with the programming punt for the end of the year. Love Dango, love PCO. Also really enjoy Oleg Prudius. Like I said, toughest shoot name in the business. This will be a fun match. It should be. I hope we get to see more out of both these guys. Instead of just going in through January, we get into weekly TV after we get past Hard to Kill. Excited to see what storylines might hold for both PCO and Dirty Dango, whether it be together after this match or something totally separate. These guys are two really good talents that we're lucky to have on this roster, and like to see a little bit more developed for them going into the new year.
So as we mentioned before, TNA and Endeavor Streaming partnered together for this TNA Plus app, and they're the two different price tiers. Just to remind you guys, if you didn't hear us talk about this on Wrestling Tonight or here, we have the two tiers: the special attraction priced at $9.99 per month or $95.99 per year, which includes access to the entire library on every TNA Plus special event, which would be your Multiverse United types of shows. But the World Championship tier is priced at $219.99 annually, and the benefits of that will include the same ones I just said with the special attraction, but they'll also include access to the 4 major annual pay-per-views: the Hard to Kill, Rebellion, Slammiversary, and Bound for Glory. So they're big 4, as they're saying here, and this is a really good deal. And I think the two different tiers are unique. The one shot of the $219.99 is going to be a lot for wrestling fans to swallow. So maybe you're not going to get a lot of those people on the entry in. You're probably going to get a lot of the buys happening on a single basis buying the pay-per-view. But if you're going to watch these events anyway, it feels like you're saving money. Like for us, we're going to be watching all 4 of these events anyway. Do the math on what they cost for pay-per-view, and then on top of that, you get all the other library and other thing to consume. It feels like a no-brainer for, if you're at the very least a former lapsed fan that has an interest in the current product, like no-brainer.
Yeah, it's going to save you some money. I mean, you're going to be paying $40 at least. I mean, and who knows if things are going up left and right, man. I mean, $40 at least for each one of the big 4. It's $160 right there. So I mean, it just for have the entire back catalog. I like that they're doing the 2-tier, because there's a lot of streaming services out there that people are paying $9.99 a month for. So almost by having the more expensive version makes the $9.99 a month not seem as bad than it being the sole option. So smart marketing move on their part.
So the card is taking shape, as we mentioned before, those matches. But outside of the ones we mentioned, we have the Ultimate X Knockouts match. We didn't get the competitors announced in here yet. We have the Chris Sabin versus Kushida versus Vikingo TNA X Division Championship match. Trinity versus Jordan Grace for the TNA Knockouts Championship. And our main event of the evening, Alex Shelley versus Moose for the TNA Championship. Not to mention TNA's newest signing will be announced as well. So in that post we discussed last week at length, which a lot of good feedback from that conversation we had about potentially who's showing up and who's being signed and are they the same person. A lot of people seem to agree with you and I that it's going to be, at the very least, there's going to be some surprises as far as it goes. Like, I think we might have some historic faces here, like the Kurt Angles, maybe an AJ Styles if we're lucky, a Samoa Joe, maybe Chris Daniels, who knows? But I think that signing is completely separate. In my opinion, it's Nick Nemeth because he's the biggest name out there. You have to make a splash. But maybe it's, I don't know. Maybe it's Mustafa Ali, but does that have the same weight that a Nick Nemeth would have? I don't know. That's for other wrestling fans to decide.
Absolutely. I mean, for me personally, I think Nick Nemeth would hold a little bit more weight to me than Mustafa Ali. Although I don't know if anybody's seen the most recent photos of him floating around on social media. He's holding a little bit more weight than usual, man. Guy is just shredded, man. I talk about the lapse or the lack thereof of some of these wellness policies, man, since we've seen some mergers and things moving around. But fellas are putting on some beef left and right. Mustafa Ali looks great. So, but yeah, I think I'm with you. I think the signing and the you're not going to believe who shows up are going to be absolutely different folks. We talked about potentially CM Punk. We talked about Samoa Joe. We talked about AJ Styles last week. Kurt Angle, I can't believe we didn't get to him last week. Kurt would be absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, shout out to Chad. The one bad Chad mentioned that. That's such a great call.
Yeah, great call. Also, out of everyone we discussed, the easiest person to get too, I imagine. So, he's not as tied up as everybody else is at the moment. So getting him in to be a part of handing over a new TNA heavyweight title would be awesome.
Yeah, and I think it's important as far as, I can't wait to see what the championships look like. We didn't even say that. That's part of it, but you want to pass the torch in some capacity. You don't have to do some big ceremony. You don't have to do a big pomp and circumstance with, lights and all that. Just having someone supporting it, Kurt Angle, just the image of Kurt Angle in the ring, whether he's in street clothes or a suit, doesn't matter to me. Like him handing over the reins of TNA, these guys that were synonymous with the brand, they're important to bridge the gap because there are guys here on the roster, Motor City Machine Guns, Alex Shelley being in the main event. He is a TNA guy. And I think it's important to recognize that they have the legacy, but it's even better to even bridge the gap further with some of the other guys that helped make TNA what it was and what people used to love about it. And it's guys like Joe, it's guys like AJ Styles, it's Kurt Angle, it's those guys that continue to drive forward. That maybe if you're a Labs fan, you haven't watched Impact in a while, and you tune in, and you see AJ Styles, you see a Kurt Angle, maybe that's what grabs you, and then you stick around for everything else. I don't know. There's something about that. I remember when Bret Hart brought the AEW championship in for the first time. It just adds a little bit more prestige to it. And I'm not saying the Impact Championship doesn't mean anything, because it does. It has the full legacy of it. And, I know that, looking at Moose and Alex Shelley, they're the two perfect guys in this match, but just to add a little bit more spice on top of it, if you can pull it off, why not? It feels like it adds a little bit to the ceremony of what we're doing here.
Absolutely, man. Simple question. Why not if you can? And I think it's helpful in the way, we talk about how when people leave Impact Wrestling, how the door is always open. And, guys like Kurt, guys like AJ Styles, guys like Samoa Joe, like they've been very open about how they look back on their time in TNA very fondly and with a sort of reverence, man. So, yeah, I think that it would be, that I was thinking the exact same thing when you mentioned Bret Hart when he was brought in to hold up the AEW world title for the first time, and how that felt very, very cool, man. Getting all or any of those three guys in as part of this, I think would just add a whole nother layer of, I don't know, just another layer of importance to it that I think that we could do without, but it would be really nice to have.
Yeah. And with them, co-signing what they're doing here and having the movement in the direction, it would still be awesome without them. Don't get me wrong, that you don't need any of this other stuff. But if we're making a first impression on a lot of people, having these other people showing up that have a lot of weight in your history and they own a lot of the accolades throughout time, it is a no-brainer. Kurt Angle, you mentioned before, again, shout out to Chad who brought that to our attention. He would be the guy to me that's the easiest, but it is definitely, similar to the Rock filming a video for Ken Shamrock's Hall of Fame induction for Impact, or, the Knockouts Championship appearing at the Royal Rumble. Those little things start to build a relationship. And who's to say Scott D'Amore didn't arrange with AJ Styles, to come out and do this, or, Scott D'Amore didn't do the same thing with Samoa Joe and do this. These are relationships, these conversations that happen. And that favors happen in wrestling, and I think this is a one-off occasion where everyone can put their swords down for a second, stop fighting. To me, this is a really big deal. This is an important moment in wrestling history for TNA to reemerge.
Absolutely, man. This pay-per-view is, like you said earlier, it's not going to disappoint, and I think there's going to be some big moments. That this is Hard to Kill 2024 is going to go down in history as one of the biggest shows in pro wrestling history, at least in the modern era.
So our final piece of news here, and we got some additions to the Hard to Kill card here, and we don't know their opponents yet, but the Grizzled Young Veterans are coming to TNA Wrestling. They shared a promo on Tuesday with Zach Gibson and James Drake, revealing they'll debut for the promotion at Hard to Kill 2024, and they declared they're going for the Impact Tag Team Championship. So in the promo, they said, Quote, TNA has a long history of working with top veteran teams in the industry, some for better and some for worse. We may not be veterans that TNA is used to working with, but let me promise you this. We are the veterans that TNA needs to work with to steer this ship in the right direction, because God only knows teams like the Rascals or the ABC are not the right men for the job. So I pass it to you. Do you just see them in put it into this tag team title match? We didn't get the announcement for Rascals and ABC yet. No brainers to put the GYV into that tag team match, have a triple threat match, and steal the goddamn show, right?
Man, I don't know. I'm so first of all, I'm super excited to have Grizzled Young Veterans making their way to TNA. These guys have been not having them somewhere in a major promotion has been a big sore spot for me, and I'm excited to have them here. I don't know if I love the idea of having them thrown into this match, because I mean it fits the storyline. I like that they've already come out. They're not just coming for the Rascals, they're coming at ABC as well. I mean they're bringing that, better, the fact that they are the top of the mountain, no matter where the mountain is, they are better than everybody else. I love that they're bringing that energy that they bring with them everywhere. But I don't know, the ABC and the Rascals, that storyline is set up very nicely, and I want to make sure that we give it its time. And I think that it would be best suited if it is just a one-off, man. I think that I think the way to do it would get the Grizzled Young Veterans one other, just get them a one-on-one tag match and have them just absolutely obliterate whoever the opponents end up being. And, maybe it's a Kenny King and a Sheldon Jean situation. Who knows? Well, but it's either way. I think we just have them come in. It's a highlight reel for Grizzled Young Veterans, and then they show up at the end of the tag match and, let them know that, hey, man, this is whoever walks away, whether it be Rascals or ABC, this is your next hill to climb. I don't know if I want to see them, even though they are established. I don't know. I just feels like it takes away from both the Rascals and the ABC a little bit to me to just plug them in immediately.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like jumping the line, especially with how protected ABC and the Rascals were in these tag titles. And the pursuit of them has been so documented, with subculture being infused, but it's really been between ABC and the Rascals for the last 365 days. So put in the Grizzly Young Veterans in here. They could pull a subculture move and just come in there and steal the titles, because we know that creatively they're doing that. And we don't know if they're signed full time to TNA Wrestling, right? Because they are making their debut, but this could be a one-off, a short period of time, similar to Will Ospreay. So yeah, I think you're right. I think optically looking at it, they probably should do a highlight reel match. There are plenty of other teams in here that they could work, and there's other guys you want to get on the card. And then you build a different program in the future for whoever comes out, Rascals or ABC, or the Grizzly Young Veterans going to be heel or face. We don't even know, because they targeted both teams. But yeah, looking at this as far as just the immediate, yes, it'd be awesome to put them into this match, but maybe you want to put some, little cheese on the trap before you start giving it away. Build it up for later on in the year. Maybe we wait for Rebellion to have this triple threat match or a one-on-one match where GYV get a shot. But yeah, I kind of agree with you. I do kind of see them getting into the fold here and getting in here, and probably, they could win the titles. You want to these moments for these shows, the ones that are going to go viral, and then you see clips online. That's the kind of stuff they're going to be going for, because it's going to attract casual eyes and people. Grizzled Veterans, former NXT UK Tag Team Champions, they had a little bit of a cult following in NXT for a bit. I could see that being a moment that everyone circles as, wow, anything can happen in the new TNA, and even a team that makes their debut can walk away with the titles that were well sought after. I could see it happening.
Yeah, I could see it going either way. And even if they do choose to go that route, I trust TNA fully to completely pull that off.
Yeah. Well, it's similar to the subculture thing. When you and I sat before Slammiversary, like, absolutely subculture is not winning these titles. And what'd they do? They pulled it with subculture, and the story made sense, though. They found a way to make it make sense. In a lot of ways, it extended ABC and the Rascals down the line, and we've gotten different layers of this feud and different variations. And quietly, this tag division has been very, very comparable to any tag division in the United States, if not elsewhere. And these titles mean a lot. So I think part of you saying that it feels like they shouldn't jump the line speaks volumes about where the titles are at this point, that you feel like a team should have to earn and pay their dues prior to getting there. I'm okay with either one, honestly. And I think the Grizzly Young Veterans are going to be a welcome addition to this roster. I hope they sign full time, because, man, they deserve a home and they deserve to be showcased. And I think WWE, they definitely wouldn't have the feel. We saw them have the opportunity with NXT. They kind of dropped the ball there. AEW, we know what happens there with some of this talent. They kind of be added to the sauce and they disappear. I think TNA is the perfect spot for a team like them to shine because they're a little bit different. And I think they're going to add a little bit of a different flavor.
And their work rate, man, it's just going to be, I think, displayed best in TNA compared to how WWE handled them. And then, I just, like you said, nailed it, lost in the sauce in AEW, man. I really hope they sign because they'd be an incredible addition to the roster. I mean, they're just a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, there's so many great wrestlers out there, not just tag teams, that, every single promotion has top of the line talent. And this is just another example where right now the GYV don't have a home. That's hard to believe with what they were doing in NXT UK. And if you're not familiar with their work, this tag team is a well-oiled machine that it would be a great addition to any promotion. It just speaks volumes about where we're at as far as they wouldn't make a lot of people's top 10 tag teams. And it's not a discredit to them. It's just the state of wrestling today. It's just, there's so much talent out there, and TNA is just reaping the benefit of constructing this well-cultivated roster. While you can't be AEW and start collecting guys and just having them in catering. You don't want that. And that's the Mustafa Ali, that's the Grizzled Young Veterans, that's this new crop of free agents are out there, even the Matt Riddles. And is there room on AEW programming for anybody? And that they have a hard time featuring the talent that's on their roster currently. The Grizzled Young Veterans would be, it's cliche as it is, 100% lost in the sauce on AEW programming.
Yeah, like I said, man, hope they sign here. They'd be perfect for new era of TNA.
So let's get to the blow by blow and kind of give our superlatives for 2023. If you're looking for the full scope of 2023, tune in New Year's Day Wrestling Tonight for everything. But Colt and I are going to focus directly on Impact Wrestling and say goodbye to what was a great year of 2023. Let's get the blow by blow.
Blow by blow.
All right, Colton, as we say goodbye to 2023, first of all, I want to say that I really much enjoy this format of the show, like the one byproduct of, in a positive way, of this punting, this waiting and biding time for Impact to get to TNA Wrestling in January. This feels like I love this format where it expands into these very deeper level conversations that we're afforded to really covering the blow by blow of the matches that we see on screen.
Yeah, same here, man. It's been fun to kind of pivot, and it just feels a lot more natural. I feel like it lends very well to both your and my style, and does allow us to go a little bit deeper. And instead of just feeling like we're covering a card, even though the cards we do get to cover here are far more exciting than anything we covered when we were doing Ring of Honor. So it's I'm a big fan, and hopefully we'll see what the new weekly TV looks like for TNA and how much different it's going to be. Maybe you'll see a blend of kind of what we're doing now and what we were doing prior going into the new year.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's part of what we're going to be doing here for sure. As we continue to look at the format, like we're reassessing what our product looks like. And this is the last time you're going to be seeing, well, is it the last time? Or are we going to have the TNA logo on our overlay going for next week? Because we're previewing technically a TNA show. We'll talk to the powers that be on the Tavern, One Bad Chad, who's so great at making our overlays. We'll have that conversation. But really, the only thing that's going to change here, Brace Run Back's going to stay the same. We're going to be talking about all the stuff you're going to be seeing on Thursday nights. But I'd like the higher level conversation about the week that was, similar to how the Raw Down approaches WWE, because you really can't cover card by card. You're really talking about a little broad stroke, but also get into the nooks and crannies of some of these news stories that deserve to be talked about, that get lost when we're on Wrestling Tonight. I can't dedicate 30 minutes conversation to Deonna Purrazzo, even though she deserves it.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. And I think there's, especially with the momentum that they have going into the new year, there is week to week, there's always that much news to talk about. And it's nice to be able to give it its time.
So let's get into our superlatives for 2023. And we had 5 categories, I should say. Just you and I were texting back and forth. Just want to give the love to what we saw in the roster here. And there's a lot of great stuff from wall to wall. And we want to avoid recency bias, of course, because I think a lot of the end of the year, whether it be TNA or Impact or AEW, whatever, it starts to stick in our heads. The Hangman Swerve matches certainly are out there in your brain, but you got to remember in January of 2023, we saw a lot of really good stuff as well. But let's start with the Impact Male Wrestler of the Year and then the Impact Knockouts Wrestler of the Year. So I'll let you start first, I'll let you give your knockouts wrestler of the year and give a little bit of why.
Sure. So for knockouts wrestler of the year, I think I'm gonna have to go with Trinity, man. I mean, it's there. I mean, everybody on the knockouts roster is incredibly talented. I don't want to shortchange anybody, and I know that Trinity, came in halfway through the year, so she hasn't been with us the entire 2023. But there was a lot of ways you could have gone with bringing her in, and I think that she has just really exuded respect for this division, and I think she has just really hit the ground running with what you want to see out of a knockouts champion, and somebody who really owns being the face of the division. Man, you could have brought her in as a heel who thought she was too good for this promotion and too good for this division, and she came in with the utmost respect for this division, came in with the utmost respect for her opponents, and she was a big get, man. I mean, let's not downplay it. Trinity is a big get for Impact Wrestling. And I think that it brought, her coming over brought a lot of eyes to the program that maybe weren't there already. And she's just had some incredible matches, man. I mean, both of her defenses against Deonna Purrazzo were incredible matches. Her match against Mickie James at Bound for Glory was, debatably best women's wrestling match of the year across any promotion. So I think that she's earned knockout of the year, man, just by being her work rate in the ring is always solid, but just the way that she's come in and she's quickly become the face of the division and the way that she's championed it, I think she deserves that honor.
Completely agree with you. She was my knockout of the year as well, just because, as you mentioned before, I think people forget how big of a deal it was that she came over here. She was I guess people preconceived notion she'd be a package deal with Mercedes going wherever she went when they left WWE together. And the fact that she's found a comfortable home here in Impact Wrestling and took that division by the reins. And she wasn't champion all year, but she certainly was really the main event all year since she's coming here. And her debut was something that was not shocking, but definitely felt right. She fit right into the fold, and her championship matches have added prestige to an already prestigious championship. She took what Deonna was doing with the championship and furthered it. And I think going into 2024, she's the perfect person to be, championing, as you said before, this division. And I fully expect Jordynne Grace to take the reins from her and help to expand it to future heights. But this has been so awesome to see her here. She was a huge get, and she's been nothing but just an absolute great ambassador for the brand, because there's a lot of people that were very familiar with Naomi in WWE that came over to watch because of her. And I can't say they'd be disappointed. She's been featured in the best way possible. She's been protected. She's been in some great, meaningful matches, and I'm excited for what 2024 has for her.
Absolutely, man.
So the Impact Male Wrestler of the Year, I'll start here, but it's got to be Alex Shelley. I mean, started the year as tag champs with Chris Sabin, and they lost in February to ABC, but the year was just getting started right there with circumstances outside of everyone's control, with Josh Alexander getting hurt. The world title was thrown into flux. Obviously, Steve Maclin took the title for a bit here, and then we had this, this opportunity for Alex Shelley emerged here, and he won the world title back in June from Steve Maclin. And then he went on this run defending against the likes of Brian Myers. He defended against Steve Maclin, then Nick Aldis, Tanahashi, a great match for Josh Alexander, John Gresham. Not to mention the other stuff that went on during the year with, the Time Machine, he was teaming with Kushida and Chris Sabin. Now that we're going to be able to see Kushida here full time in TNA, maybe we're going to get to see more of the Time Machine and them teaming up in trios action. His year was awesome. And Alex Shelley, it's the making the best out of a situation that probably no one really wanted, but he really earned his spot always. Like, we know how his legacy was already cemented prior to this world championship run. He didn't even need this, but it just takes it to a new level here. I'm so glad that he had this opportunity and that they didn't use it as a transition. I think we looked at that Josh Alexander return date as when he's going to be losing the championship, but I'm so happy that as we approach TNA, he's the guy walking in with the championship that, yeah, you and I are predicting that Moose is going to beat him. But as far as his year in review, this might be one of his best years yet. And it was bundled with, he had a calf injury that he was nursing through. He piled through this and tried his best to make all these dates. They went international, and he was the perfect guy to carry the company on their shoulder during a really difficult time. And they didn't really miss a beat, which is hard to say because Josh Alexander, the walking weapon, was that guy for the longest time. And Alex Shelley just helped reset the course and be a stabilizer for them. And, Alex Shelley was the guy all year for them.
Yeah, man, I got 100% agree. Alex Shelley, it's got to be him. And I just to kind of echo what you said about the fact that we went with Alex Shelley being the guy and him not being a transitional champion, and that we were able to make a very compelling storyline out of is he or is he not a transitional champion with Josh Alexander returning. I really loved that, man, and I'm so happy to see as well that he is the guy coming into TNA carrying the belt, because I mean you and I both had our money on him dropping the belt at Bound for Glory, and the fact that they stuck with him was a pivot that I appreciate and have really enjoyed. And yeah, this has been Alex Shelley's year, man. Absolutely. And it's very well deserved. You talk about TNA guys that have been with the company for a long time. This is his 2023 has been his moment, man. And I'm super happy for him.
So going with the match of the year here, I'll let you start here, but I'm pretty sure we were going to be in unison with this match as well, but I'll let you start with it and I'll give my superlatives on why it was the choice as well.
Yeah, I feel I would be very surprised if you and I had different picks for this, man. I feel like there's no way that it's not Speedball Mike Bailey versus Will Ospreay at Bound for Glory, man. There's no this is a contender for match of the year across all professional wrestling. Like there's no way if this wasn't in your top 5, I don't know what your criteria is for scoring, because yeah, this is one of the greatest Impact Wrestling matches of all time. I'll say that.
This match was incredible. It was my pick as well. What an impressive match. And going back and watching this, because as I said, we're recording with tourneys. I wanted to make sure I'm up to date on all these matches. And got to say, I mean, I'm not giving you away the pick, but Speedball and Will Ospreay was definitely in contention for that award. It was by far the best Impact match of all year. It was a coming out party for both these guys. Of course, everyone knows who Ospreay and Bailey were, but this caught attention that a lot of matches didn't get, and this was praised by casual fans, by journalists, by wrestling fans at large. Just it had a little bit of something for everybody. And when you consider the stage, you consider just the stakes here, and just what it did for both these guys' careers. To me, it will live in lore. And the match as time goes on, it's going to age like a barrel-aged whiskey, and it's just absolutely just perfection when you watch what these guys did in this ring. And the crazy part to say is if they linked up again, I think they probably could top it, which is insane to think about. But I think these guys can, because we saw the remainder of the year, Speedball and Will Ospreay continue to tear it up. And, you know, well-deserved. This match is my match of the year, and it could be match of the year in any promotion, but it certainly was the Impact match of the year.
Absolutely.
So we also have the pay-per-view of the year, and this match lived on this card. It was Bound for Glory by a lot here. And I looked through some of these other cards to discuss this. But I mean, when you go with the likes of Chris Sabin versus Kenta, you have the Rascals versus ABC, Josh Alexander versus Alex Shelley, Ospreay versus Bailey, and then top it off with Trinity versus Mickie James. It was hard because I'm like, oh, this is definitely recency bias because it's the end of the year. It's most fresh in your brain. It feels like the biggest deal. When you compare it to every card they did, like I love the 2 Multiverse United shows. I love the January Hard to Kill show. Rebellion was good. Nothing topped this from end to end. And the fact that it had the match of the year plus other matches that were in contention, that Shelley and Alexander match was up there for match of the year as well. So to me, this was definitely the card of the year that Impact put on.
Yeah, this was probably the toughest superlative for me to decide on, because for me, I kept making a case for Slammiversary, and so full disclosure, I'm with you. I think Bound for Glory is the pay-per-view of the year, and it really just comes down to work rate. But what kept bringing me back to Slammiversary being a contender was the surprise return of Josh Alexander. Nobody expected that. Just the fact that moment really got me. And I also wasn't sure that Shelley was going to beat Aldis at that point, because we had no whiff that he was heading to WWE at that point. So, but just work rate alone and just where the storylines were, like you said, man, Sabin, Kenta, Rascals, ABC, Ospreay, Bailey, Alexander, Shelley, both 2 of the top matches of the year for any promotion. And the Trinity Mickie James match, man, I mean, that was an absolute banger. So yeah, Bound for Glory, their biggest show of the year. Hard to argue that it was not the best pay-per-view.
So as far as bold predictions go for 2024, this is a little bit more open-ended. Curious to hear what your thoughts are. I mean, you can go as extreme as you want. You can kind of shoot for the moon, or you can kind of stay safe. But I'm certain in 52 weeks from now, I'd like to revisit these to see how accurate we were.
Sure.
But what is your bold prediction for the Impact TNA brand going into 2024 and beyond?
My bold prediction is we're going to see more intergender wrestling from TNA. We've seen a little bit of it this year, especially with the storyline recently, most recently between Kylan King and Bully Ray. We've seen Bully Ray and Jordan Grace square off. My bold prediction is by the end of the year, Jordan Grace it might not be a long run, but she's going to be in the picture, and I'm going to go ahead and predict that she holds the TNA World Heavyweight Championship before the end of the year.
Man, I got chills when you said that. I would love to see that happen. I think it'd be amazing, and she would definitely be the person to do this. I love it. So I would love to get behind something like that. But for my big prediction, I have TNA represented on WWE TV in a positive light, and a co-promoted card will be announced at some point for 2025 during the year. So that would be my bold prediction. Is it likely? Probably not. It's more likely today than it was a year ago. So a co-promoted card in some capacity, televised or not, I would say they're going to be in-house with, Scott D'Amore and Paul Levesque have to sit in a room together and come up with finishes. That would be accounted for. It doesn't have to be a PLE. It doesn't have to be something like they do Forbidden Door or Multiverse United, but I think we're going to be seeing a co-promoted show for 2025, but it will be announced in 2024. That's my bold prediction. And my final bold prediction is Impact will find a home on a more extensive TV network, and maybe be the first to find a wrestling home on a streaming platform. So they're going to kind of be sought after. I think they're like we mentioned before, they're the beneficiary of this bidding war for the other promotions, and we saw NWA be attracted by CW and all that. I think TNA has a lot to offer. They are going to be affordable compared to both the other brands, but I also think they're going to take some risks here, and I think they're going to expand where they're able to reach. And like I said, Scott D'Amore seeing in different colors, looking at the roadmap through his lens, I think he has a plan for 2024, and they're going to knock it out of the park, man. I'm very, very excited to see where they're going to go.
I am too, man. I love all those predictions. And I just think about the year in wrestling in 2023 and how many things that have happened this year that if you'd asked us in 2022, we thought would ever happen.
True.
I think the cross promoted show is a very real possibility, man. And, it could even be a pay-per-view. So that, I think it's much more, like you said, much more likely than it was a couple of weeks ago. And I feel like it probably gets more and more likely every day, man. I mean, just, example number one, never would have thought CM Punk would have been back on WWE TV, but here we are. So
here we are for sure. And as we say goodbye to 2023, we're going to get to Shock and Awe, give some shilling. We have some stuff to talk about with our new Patreon. So we'll give you guys the details there, but we're going to get to Shock and Awe.
Shock and Awe.
All right. Next time we're going to be getting to you guys will be in 2024. So next Thursday, when you guys lace up the boots and step in the ring with us, it's going to be a new year. So hopefully you guys all enjoy your New Year's Eve and stay safe wherever you're doing. And, we were talking about before, I think Chad had mentioned it on Wrestling Tonight. They're going to be mentioning on the flagship. We have a Patreon that's being launched for the new year. We're going to be going in a different direction because of, a couple things. We definitely want to be able to expand what we're able to do here. As far as content goes, the limitations of YouTube have been a little bit constricting, whether it be just the reach, feeling like we aren't getting as much love as far as the algorithm goes, but we also want to build and continue to build on the community that we're continuing to cultivate with the Tavern Townies, that, the people that are popping in here at all time, obviously TNT and all those guys that pop in here in the chat that are consistently here watching with us. But we're also want to reach some new ears in 2024 as well. And help, create some different content. Maybe it's going to be travel vlogs. Maybe it's going to be short reels. Maybe it's fig hunts. I don't know. But YouTube certainly has its restrictions of how we stream here. But for $2.99 a month, that is 12 quarters, less than, as Chad says, less than a truck stop cup of coffee. So support us in any way you can. It goes a really long way. We've been doing this for an extended period of time, week after week, because we love it. But we also, we want to make sure we're able to give back to you guys, and any money that comes into us is going to be reinvested in what we do as far as the infrastructure of the Tavern. And we want to continue to grow as time goes on.
Absolutely, man. Well said, Ace. $2.99, man, doesn't get much cheaper than that. You're not going to come across many. So you're not going to come across many platforms that offer what we offer for that kind of price. And I mean, there will still be free content. Absolutely. You'll still be able to access, things via audio, but as far as video and things like that, that $2.99 is going to go a long way of, like Ace said, us being able to reinvest into the promotion or into the product and being able to offer you guys more than we offer now. So we're, keep an eye on the socials. There's, like I said, January 1st, you can be seeing a whole lot about it. It's been in the works for quite some time, and a lot of discussions and a lot of work from everybody at the tavern. So we're really excited to see it go live, and we're excited to be able to give you guys more. As always, theturnbuckletavern.com. We are everywhere: Instagram, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Then joining Patreon, TikTok, Twitch, Twitter, Pro Wrestling Tees. You can find us anywhere and everywhere. Please keep joining the community. Keep writing reviews, 5 stars, and commenting on our stuff. We absolutely love that. The growth we saw on Instagram this year was incredible, man. So if you guys are catching us there, you'll be seeing things about the Patreon soon, and we look forward to being able to offer more tiers and more content down the road going through that model.
So if you guys listen to this live on Thursday, I'm already in Worcester, Massachusetts, finished up with Youth of the Nation Remarkable Wrestling. And shout out to Kono Capuccio. The Tavern is sponsoring him for the show. He has the Tavern logo on his white fight shorts for the dog collar match with Dominic De Niro for the Riot Championship. So that's a big moment for the Tavern as we say goodbye to 2023. So shout out to Remarkable Wrestling for allowing us to have that platform. And, if one person sees the logo and looks into what we do, that's what we're looking for. But I'm going to be in Restival at Restival all weekend. Like I said, Thursday is my first show. Sunday and New Year's Eve, I'm going to be with Rad Pro Wrestling for the Holiday Spectacular. It's a 12 p.m. bell for Rad Pro, so I'm going to be getting back in the car, hopefully make it in time, celebrate New Year's Eve on Long Island, where I belong. But it's going to be a great weekend of wrestling. If you guys are in the area within Stones Throw, there's a lot of great wrestling happening, from ETU to Pizza Party to ICW, Remarkable Wrestling, Rad Pro, just end to end, not to mention Wrestling Open is happening Thursday night. So I'll be in town. If you guys are around and see me, say what up. I'll have some Tavern stickers, Acefield Retro stickers, but just most importantly, support independent wrestling. It is the lifeblood of what we do here. It's why we're able to have this talent that gets in flux, because every single person you enjoy on any of these rosters, they had to run through the indies and they were supported in some capacity. They were able to cultivate their craft, and Restival is going to be a celebration of sorts for everybody. So I'm looking forward to ending the year on a high note. 2023 was an absolute blast, highlighted by this, Colton. I look forward to this every single week, talking about Impact Wrestling with you. And I'm looking forward to 2024, every week being in the same chair, having the same conversations about some great freaking wrestling.
Same here, man. And going forward, TNA, like we said, name staying the same. We're just going to have a different logo down. We're going to try to sweet talk Chad into maybe giving us a little bit of yellow in here just to make it pop with the new TNA logo. But yeah, man, back at you. I love doing this show with you. Look forward to it every week. And man, just the horizon for 2024 for Brace for Impact looks super exciting, man. So shout out to everybody who's been on this ride with us, and keep hanging out. It's only going to get better.
And being that this is my last show of the year, because Shot Nostalgia, we had the finale for season 5 last week. We're going to be dropping the audio versions of season 1 happening. So if you're listening to this on audio, Friday, you're going to hear me from a year and a half ago talking about WCW 1996. So we're going to be dropping that in reverse. So if you look at the description, you'll see the date that it drops. So if we're talking about current day wrestling during that show, you'll hear maybe some things that maybe are not relative to today. A little less polish on the show, but to me, it is the passion project that started with Shot Nostalgia. I think it deserves a place to live on audio, and it's the only way to do it. And we have a 30-week break before we get into season 6, which will be NXT Black and Gold. Myself, Mike Belcaster, and Matt from Extra Cooler can be popping on with us. And, of course, Colton Jesse's always welcome. Some other guests can be welcome to cover the NXT takeovers. That's not happening until July. So, point being, saying goodbye for 2023 on behalf of myself and Colton. We appreciate all your support as always. Anything you do, that whether it be a review or just telling someone about Turnbuckle Tavern, making the effort on Instagram, sharing something, it goes such a long way to help what we're trying to build here. And that's a community of wrestling fans that may not always be like-minded. We may not all share the same opinion, but we all have the passion and a love for pro wrestling and for, competitive discourse that we love to put on a platform here, whether it be the debate or here. We absolutely love pro wrestling. We wouldn't be doing anything else on our weekly schedule because, like I said, man, this is bigger and better every single year. In 2024 is going to be the best year yet for not only TNA wrestling, but for Turnbuckle Tavern.
Absolutely, man. We'll stick with us. We're looking forward to it.
So that's all we got here. And I want to wish you guys a happy new year. Like I said, hopefully you guys have a great time with whatever you're doing on New Year's Eve. And most importantly, stay safe and, whatever you're doing. And I wish everyone a great time. And Colton, same to you, man. I hope you enjoy everything that goes on this weekend. But we'll catch you guys next week in the new year. A year older, a year wiser. TNA Wrestling's here to stay. We'll catch you guys after a while.